Hey, what's up, y'all? Ghost here, and today I'm going to be talking about my top strategies for countering Shadow Thief. So I'm one of the few people that actually enjoys playing against Thief. That's not to say that I haven't had my fair share of super frustrating games against him, but I do believe he is the most interesting hero to play against. And I believe what makes him so interesting is his ability to be able to change from a few different game plans that he has to beat you, forces you to adapt sometimes multiple times throughout the game to beat him consistently. And I think it's just a really fun puzzle to try to figure out. I think one of the biggest keys to learning to counter Shadow Thief is one, just understanding what those game plans that he has are, and then obviously how to counter them. So first I'm going to run through the three main game plans that Shadow Thief uses, and then I'll talk about how to counter each one individually, and then I'll go into what I think the best strategies are to counter all three all at once. So the first, and I believe the most common game plan that Shadow Thief's going to be using, is as the Control Thief. So what this looks like is he's going to be right from the get-go hard chasing Cardicopia, and he's really just digging and trying to find his dice mods. And then from there, he's going to shift gears into building up his CP, whether that be from his straights or from pickpocket. But he's just going to try to do that as quickly as possible, get use out of those dice mods for forcing either an ultimate or getting a large straight and getting some big damage through. And then once he uses up those dice mods, he'll kind of repeat the process, jumping right back into Cardicopia, and then hit you for a second ult or another large straight. I think the best way to counter a Control Thief specifically is to kind of just beat him at his own game, to a certain degree at least. So I don't believe anybody's ever going to keep up with Shadow Thief on the economy side 100%. So I think that heroes that can accomplish drawing cards at the same time as either getting some heals or enough damage to outpace the poisons can make it very difficult for Thief to accomplish what he's trying to do. So I think a few of the best heroes for specifically countering the Control Thief is one, Artificer. He can really lean into his schematics ability, and he's going to be able to do pretty well keeping up with Shadow Thief's card draw, but he's also going to be getting a little bit of healing in, as well as building up synth and everything to be able to do some chip damage with his nanobots. So yeah, he's going to be able to get enough card draw to keep him off the ultimates especially, but then also building up enough healing and stuff that even if he does get the large straight or something, Shadow Thief's just not going to be able to keep up that way. So I think Artificer's one of the best against the Control Thief. Another one is Rogue. She doesn't really have any of that extra card draw, but she's going to be able to heal so much more and also get so much more damage through her leech ability, where it kind of accomplishes the same thing. She's just not worried about the ultimate or the large straight anymore, because by the time he gets it, she's already getting close to 60 health, and then gets hit with the ultimate. By the time he can cycle back through and get another ultimate through, she's already going to have healed back up quite a bit and been continuing to do damage to him. So I think Rogue is another great one. And then the last one I would talk about is Raveness. Raveness can really beat a Control Thief just from spamming Foul Friend. So that's just going to generate so much consistent damage, a little bit of card draw, and then also be getting the heals in, kind of doing everything all at once. So yeah, another great one against the Control Thief. So the next game plan for Thief I would talk about is as the Stall Thief. So I don't think anybody's really ever looking to use this game plan right from the get-go. This is by far like the most annoying strategy to play against, but normally this is going to be a Control Thief that was getting hit with a lot of early pressure, and now he's getting forced into using his dice mods on his defense. And then from there, Shadow Thief is going to just shift gears into doing nothing but Cardicopia. He doesn't really care about building up his CP anymore. He just wants to make sure he's getting enough cards where he's able to either mod you out of your attacks or mod his defense to be able to survive long enough that his poisons are gonna bring your health low enough that he can just hit you with either a small straight or a dagger strike to finish you off that way. Super annoying to play against. Honestly, I think the best strategy is to just use the same strategies as countering the Control Thief, but I do think there's a couple other heroes that really excel at beating the stall thief. First one is Tactician. He can kind of play the Uno reverse card on thief with his strategy and just use his tactical advantage to transfer every poison that gets on him. I've personally lost as Shadow Thief several times to this strategy, and it's super annoying way to lose. So yeah, just Tactician can really keep up with Thief's card draw, do everything he can to counter the control Thief, but then he can become the stall Tactician once there's enough poisons out there and chip away at Shadow Thief that way. Another great one against the stall Thief is Black Panther. The poisons are really actually helping him get his engine going, getting a little bit of damage every turn, gaining up his kinetic energy. Which is just going to help him get more damage through from exploding, as well as getting cards and CP that way. So he can do really well against Stall Thief. And then the last game plan I'll talk about for Thief is as the Aggro Thief. So this is by far the most straightforward game plan for Thief. He's never really going to be leaning into Cardcopia. He's going to be happy if it pops up, but he's going to be chasing his straights to build up his CP, but then also utilizing Dagger Strike quite a bit, and trying to use his sneak attacks as soon as he gains them. As far as countering them, I don't think there's anything super fancy here. I think Thief kind of becomes a typical dice throne hero with this strategy. He's still very strong with this, but really you can kind of just play your normal game. It's just a race to the finish at that point. So I mean, Pyromancer I think can do really well against a strictly aggro Thief. I mean, it's hard to out aggro Pyromancer. I think Ninja, somebody like Ninja that can avoid all the damage, or somebody that can prevent half damage, is going to do well against Thief. I would seriously question your opponent's ability as Shadow Thief if they're deciding to go aggro style against somebody like Ninja. And then heroes with stackable attack mods are going to do pretty well, because even if he gets lucky and goes into shadows, you'll be able to hold on to your attack mods for the next attack, and it'll just be a bigger attack next time. So yeah, nothing really fancy, just a race to the finish in this one. So next I'm going to talk about what I believe is the best way to counter Thief regardless of what strategy he's using. So kind of a way to counter him just overall. And I think the first big key is just understanding that regardless of what strategy Thief decides to go for, he's going to be very vulnerable for the first 2-3 turns. No matter what, there's going to be some amount of a build-up phase for Shadow Thief. So I think one of the most important things is to not try to focus in on undefendable too early. First reason being is your undefendable damage is typically going to be a lot lower than your options for defendable damage. But then two, I actually think it's important to run into his defense early on. You want to be putting a lot of pressure on him. I actually believe one of the best ways to beat Thief is to try to force him to go into the retreat and kind of become that stall Thief. Force out those dice mods as early as possible. It just really weakens him and forces him into like one specific game plan. So yeah, big defendable attacks early is huge. And while we're on the topic of his defense, I think people just in general live in too much fear of his defense. Without his dice mods, it's not a super scary defense at all. Without the upgrade, it has about a 12% chance of going into shadows naturally. And then with the upgrade, it only goes up to 16% chance. So with the upgrade, it's about a 1 in 6 chance to hit shadows naturally. Of course, I mean, there's going to be those games where he rolls into shadows 2-3 times without any mods, and honestly that's one that you're just gonna have to kind of accept as a possibility. It is still dice thrown, so that's probably just not going to be your game to win in that one. But you need to play your game plan that gives you the best chance to win consistently. It's you got to really play the odds, and the odds are most of the time his defense is not going to hit without the dice mods. And right from the get-go, it's not a bad thing to see those dice mods come out. That just gives you more opportunity to keep the pressure going, because now he doesn't have those ones for the next attack. But yeah, just hitting his defense early is super important, I believe. So the next big key I would talk about is to always stay super aware of where the state of the game is at currently. So what this involves is always checking up on one, his EP gain, and then his card draw, and then obviously like also just what upgrades are on his board. With the CP, that's a very strong indicator of exactly how dangerous Shadow Thief is in the moment. This is going to be a lot of what you base on like how many turns you have left, is looking at his CP. Typically, if he's in the 7 to 9 CP range, you're still not going to be worried about his large straights or ultimates at that point. Because normally he's going to have to play some dice mods to get one of those. There is a slight caveat where he could be trying to catch you off guard by holding on to either Shadow Coin or getting paid and kind of catch you off guard a little bit that way. But generally, you still have a little bit of time if he's in mid CP range. But I do believe the most important thing against Shadow Thief is paying super close attention to his card draw. So one that's just kind of keeping an eye on how many times he's activated Cardcopia, but then also how many mods has he played on his defense, like what mods has he used already, have you seen Enter the Shadows yet? All these are going to factor into whether or not you should be shifting gears to more undefendable damage, or if you can keep the pressure up and keep on running into his defense. Another thing to keep an eye on is whenever he goes above 6 cards and then he has to sell some cards, paying attention to what cards he's selling can it be a good indicator of what type of cards are in his hand. Because if he's selling like a Better D or Helping Hand or some of the stronger cards for Shadow Thief, that's a good indicator that he's got quite a few dice mods and he's probably about to push for an ultimate or something along those lines. So it might be a good time to try to flush out some of those mods or just try to push up the aggression at that point. As far as the upgrades go for him, the only ones I'm really like trying to pay attention to that might change up my game plans a little bit is one, obviously the Shadow Defense upgrade just gives him a better chance of getting into shadows naturally. So I might shift gears into doing Undefendable a little bit earlier if he has this card out. Pickpocket shouldn't really change up your game plan much. It might do little bits here and there, but him being able to steal 2 CP from you can really throw you off in certain matchups for sure. But then the most important one to keep an eye on is obviously the Cardcopia upgrade. So if there ever was a nerf for Shadow Thief, the only thing that I could really be okay with is if they changed the random discard to allowing your opponent to choose what card to discard. I still don't think it's a necessary change for Shadow Thief, but just due to there being a lot more broken cards I think than this one, but still if this card comes out early, it completely changes how I'm going to be playing that game. Once I see this card, I'm going to be pushing hard to try to get value out of my cards as soon as possible. So if this card is out and he rolls 2 5s and a 6, I may be using my Soul Wild on a 5 to try to force him to whiff at that point, and just so I'm not having to discard the Soul Wild and also get some value and at least slow him down a little bit. Never feels good to have to discard the Twice as Wild, the Bye-Bye, Helping Hand. So yeah, as soon as you've seen this card, you gotta push up the aggression. If I'm holding on to Bye-Bye, I might start intentionally running into his defense more just so I can try to quickly get use out of the Bye-Bye. But yeah, super annoying card to see early game. The next thing I would talk about is I believe you get by far the highest value out of your dice mods by using them against Shadow Thief's defense rolls. And the reason I believe this is I think it kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone. One, by obviously just trying to get more damage through, but most of the time this is just going to flush out the extra dice mods that Shadow Thief would have been using for his ultimate anyways. So if you can flush out the 6-hit and samesies by modding him off of his defense, those are now cards that he's not going to be able to use for his ult that he would have in the next couple turns anyways. But then also I just think it's super important to keep that pressure going. So using dice mods on the defense I think is by far the highest value for you. And the last thing I would talk about is you really got to learn when the right time is to start shifting to your more undefendable attacks and trying to get the more reliable damage through. This is probably going to be the most field-based strategy that is just going to take some times and some reps to really figure out when the right time to shift to this is. Typically, I would say it's between the 15 and 20 HP mark is when you'll kind of shift gears to just trying to make sure you're getting damage through. But a lot of it depends on just where you're at with your HP, and then also looking at those things like his CP, like how dangerous is Shadow Thief at this point, what cards has he played. Yeah, all sorts of different variables are going to go into this. Kind of depends on your specific hero. How good of options does he have to get reliable undefendable damage out? So yeah, general rule of thumb, if you're outside of lethal range and it's going to take him a little bit, you might be able to shift to the undefendable a little bit earlier. But if he's got you down to even 30 health or lower, you might need to get one more bigger attack through before trying to shift gears, just because you're kind of on the clock. If you're within lethal range of his ultimate, he can pull that off in one turn and catch you off guard, and yeah, always an annoying way to lose to Shadow Thief. So this one, gonna take some reps, and you'll have to learn your matchups, learn when the right time to shift gears to this is. So next I'm going to talk about what I believe are the top 5 heroes for countering Shadow Thief overall. Starting off at number 5 is Black Widow, and this will probably be the most surprising on the list. So I used to believe that Shadow Thief should dominate this matchup, his ability to attack her CP, but then also they're both kind of build-up characters, so I used to think Black Widow would give him too much time to build up. But I do think she has some of the best tools in the games for beating Shadow Thief. And one of the main ones is her straights. So I talked about the importance of early on getting a lot of damage through by running into his defense and doing big defendable attacks. Her straight abilities become super strong in that they can be consistently running into his defense, but then also inflicting time bombs, which I know there's status removal and different ways, and he can always roll a 6, but large majority of the time you're getting some damage through, and then also 4 damage. So even if he gets into shadows, most of the time he's still going to be taking at least 4 damage. So he really loses value from his defense with abilities like this. And this kind of allows you to just keep up the aggression all game and consistently be forcing him to have to make that decision to play dice mods on this defense while still guaranteeing some damage getting through. And then also with Black Widow, kind of on the note with the time bombs, once she gets up to 6 upgrades on her board, she becomes extremely dangerous to Shadow Thief just with the ability to, the time bombs are starting on that 1 second mark at that point. So now towards that end game, when you're shifting into that undefendable damage, which she still doesn't even really need to by having this as an option, attacking and putting a 1 second time bomb on there. But if you wanted to guarantee the damage getting through, infiltrate with the upgrade, now it would be inflicting a 1 second time bomb and then flipping it. So even if Shadow Thief is already in shadows, this gets by it and is pretty much a guaranteed 4 damage as long as Shadow Thief isn't holding on to bye-bye. So having that as a tool as well is just huge, a great way for finishing off Shadow Thief. As far as her upgrades go, you still kind of stick to the game plan of getting Red Rune Trinket out. But I think getting hacked out early is super important. One, it's just a low CP thing, so even if Shadow Thief's trying to attack your CP, getting some low CP upgrade out is always nice, allows you to draw a card, and this is going to be an ability you should be leaning into quite a bit. The grapple upgrade early can be nice just to help you counter him stealing your CP. You can use the recon ability to try to get some upgrades out early. Not necessarily something I'll be prioritizing. And then the Baton Strike upgrade is pretty nice just for trying to easily get the 6 upgrades out, but then also you can try to time it for when you're trying to gauge where he's at with his cards. Forcing him to reveal his hand is super helpful. But yeah, Black Widow, great counter. She also has better economy than most, so good chance she'll run into her dice mod she needs to mod his defense a little more often. But yeah, just a great overall kit for beating Shadow Thief. At number 4 is Thor. So he's a hero that doesn't really need to deviate from his normal game plan. So a lot of that is just going to be alternating between doing Mighty Summon and doing pretty much any other attack. He's got the unique ability with the guard break to be forcing out undefendable, but it's going to be big undefendable attacks, so I'm not feeling like I'm falling too far behind by chasing those early on. I might prioritize Odin Force a little bit more in this matchup, so Mighty Summon into Odin Force. That way I can be hopefully gaining some Electrokinesis at the same time as getting some damage through. That way I can build up as many cards as well. There's nothing really special with his strategy here. It's just try to get as much damage through as possible, use your guard breaks whenever you get them, draw as many cards with your Electrokinesis. And then the other nice thing with him is Thor's Hammer is it's an isolated source of damage, so you can always get past shadows with the hammer. So yeah, just a pretty easy strategy with him. You don't have to do a whole lot of fancy stuff with him, but yeah, super good kit for countering Thief as well. For number 3 is Vampire Lord, and she's one of my personal favorite heroes, but I think she is set up perfectly to counter Thief, so I wouldn't be leaning into Glamour too early on, but yeah, just stick to that strategy of going after big damage early. She can lean into her straights or rend even early on, just trying to get some big defendable attacks in. I'm going to be trying to aggressively get bleeds on Shadow Thief, that way I can hopefully have 2 bleeds on him early. One that's just nice for getting little bits of damage through consistently, but then also that's going to be gaining your blood power after your attacks to just keep the engine going without having to lean into Sanguimancy every few turns. That way you can just keep the damage rolling as consistently as possible. I'm still gonna be taking Sanguimancy first turn if it pops up, but really I'm still focusing in on trying to get some big damage through. If I get any cards that gave me the blood power, I'm gonna be playing them early. In this matchup, you're not gonna be chasing the heal at all. That's just a pretty big trap in a lot of matchups, but especially Shadow Thief. He's gonna have his cards. He's gonna run into his Not This Time. He's gonna have Enter the Shadows. He has like so many ways to really disrupt your heals, where you could spend them all and then he plays Enter the Shadows and now you don't heal at all and you just missed out on 12 damage. So I would be strictly using the blood power to make sure I'm getting as much damage through as possible. Vampire Lord also has some great upgrades for countering Thief. I mean, one, obviously Glamour. This ability, even without the upgrade, Vampire Lord is gonna be able to shift to that undefendable damage a little earlier than most heroes, just because of how easy this ability is to activate. But then also, if you have built up some blood power or have 2 bleeds, this is either 7 damage with blood power or 8 if you have the upgrade, and it's just going to be building up CP. And what I also like about this ability is if you can shift gears from probably like the 25 health range to just spamming Glamour, and from that point on I would be just trying to spend my Mesmerizes as soon as I gain them on Shadow Thief's turn and just try to spam it. It's not a super reliable token, but if you're using it every single turn, it's gonna work some of the times and you can really disrupt Thief that way. But obviously Glamour, one of the best abilities for countering Thief. The small straight upgrade, I would love to see early game. That way I just have a consistent way to be inflicting bleeds. So if you don't know, the small straight upgrade changes it from 7 to 8 damage, but then you get to choose between inflicting a bleed or gaining a Mesmerize instead of having to roll for it. So just a great way to guarantee that you're getting the bleeds on Thief. The large straight upgrade, I'm always hoping for against Thief. Not only does it change it to guaranteed undefendable, you no longer have to spend the Mesmerize, but then it also gets you the fallback ability of Gash. So 5 undefendable is just huge. It's a great early game. It allows you to kind of chase Rend with a little less fear of whiffing, but then also 8 undefendable is never going to be anything that you're too upset about going against Thief. So a great one for sure. And then with the Sanguimancy upgrade, this is one that I would consider. I don't normally play this in most matchups, but one, I mean, obviously the extra heal is nice, but getting the fallback ability Presence can actually be really helpful, because card draw is is gonna be great against Thief. No matter what, I wouldn't lean into this still a whole lot. Thief is just gonna beat you on the economy side, but it is nice to, if he's already in shadows or you just weren't able to roll anything else, having that as a fallback is super strong against Thief. But yeah, definitely one of my favorite counters to Shadow Thief. For my number 2 spot, I have Curse Pirate. So I think Pirate, more so than anybody else, is the best at actually disrupting Shadow Thief's game. She really has like a few different paths that she can take to counter Thief. I think the best way is by getting either a turn 1 or turn 2 early flip by hitting him with Shiver Me Timbers. By doing this, you've now just made it so that every time he activates Cardicopia or Pickpocket, he's now getting a powder keg. So you force him into this spot where he has to be doing attacks, and from the early game he's gonna be hitting you with some really weak attacks into one of the strongest defenses in the game. I think with this strategy, it is super important to try to get Cursed Doubloons on Shadow Thief as early as possible. So the first few turns, I would be leaning into Dreadmark, trying to get the Cursed Doubloons on him, and then hopefully you're getting some from your defense as well. But faster you can get 3 doubloons on him, the better. At that point, you're only losing 1 more damage per turn than he is. But then yeah, it's just, he's gonna just struggle keeping up with your damage output at that point. Yeah, it's just a super difficult, super frustrating thing to deal with Thief. And then once you have the 3 doubloons on him, you can kind of lean into pretty much anything else. At that point, the Shivering becomes an 11 undefendable attack. The straights are super strong. It's kind of similar to Black Widows, where you can be hitting them with defendable damage, but then also giving yourself a good chance for guaranteed 3 damage. Bizzle Walk can be very annoying for him, especially if you flipped early. He's going to be struggling to gain cards, gain CP, so dealing a CP and forcing a discard can be really frustrating as well. Not something I'm going to lean into. It's not quite high enough damage, I don't think, but there's really nothing on his board that you're upset with rolling into, and super easy to roll for. I will say, if you do not get the flip in the first couple turns, I would be trying to avoid it at all costs. If you give Shadow Thief a chance to build up a little bit before you flip, he's just going to have too much strength to be able to like either just stall out the game completely by doing Shadow Dance, or his attacks are just going to be big enough at that point where you just can't keep up. So I would avoid the flip if it doesn't come to you early. But in that scenario, she can either beat Shadow Thief in a couple different ways. One, kind of doing the Black Widow thing and just leaning into the straights. Do have to be careful about how many doubloons you have on you, because he's not going to be attacking you much. So even with this strategy, you're going to have to shift gears into X marks the spot to try to keep up your doubloons. Or your other option is to just spam X marks the spot over and over again. You'll be able to keep up with Shadow Thief's card draw, as well as getting some undefendable damage in, and this will just help you like stay from having to flip. With this strategy, she's got some like really strong cards as well. So yeah, she's gonna have a lot of ways to disrupt Shadow Thief by just spamming X marks the spot. But really, even on the non-curse side, it's all the same ability still. You're never really unhappy with anything that you activate here. Even if you activate Shiver Me Timbers and decide not to flip, 7 undefendable is still great to fall into. So yeah, she probably has the most different ways to beat Shadow Thief. So yeah, super solid counter. And now on to my number 1 counter for Shadow Thief, and that is Spider-Man. He's another one that I don't think really has to deviate from his normal game plan at all. If your game plan works out, he's set up perfectly for beating Shadow Thief. And I think one of the big mistakes that people do with Spider-Man versus Shadow Thief is they, from too early on, focus too much on just the straights. I'm still trying to get it every turn, but I'm never wanting this on turn 1. I would still take Spider Reflexes over one of the straights, at least on the first attack that I do. But he's just set up so perfectly for just doing his normal game plan. So on turn 1, you're hoping to activate combo, getting 5 damage through. Normally on the first turn, Shadow Thief's not going to have enough mods yet to really do anything about it, so large majority of the time you get that 5 damage through, and then you're hoping to get your straights. That's another 5 damage and a web. So on your first turn, it's not uncommon to get 12 damage through it and a web on him, which just really like starts your engine going, because now on your next attack, it's going to be 5 undefendable damage, and it's going to be hopefully you're straight again. It's going to be 5 defendable this time, and now Thief has to start making weird decisions of when to play his dice mods. You're running into his defense over and over, but he's getting far less value pushing himself into shadows, because now he's already taken 5 damage and 2 from the web, so he's already taken 7. So he's probably not going to play a dice mod to just prevent another 5 damage. So first 2 turns, you've already done 24 damage. You can just put so much pressure on Shadow Thief early on without even having to really do anything super special. But then even in the scenarios where he, like best case scenario for Thief is him getting shadows off of your combo attack. Even when that happens, you're really not unhappy, because now you just have a combo on your board that's just setting you up to be able to do your next turn starting with a straight and then combo into a second straight. So you're always gaining value the large majority of the time with Spider-Man, even if Thief goes into shadows. A couple upgrades I think were great for Spider-Man in this matchup. I'm hoping to get this every single game. Just having combo up as the follow back ability, which is gain combo and then deal 2 undefendable damage. Doesn't sound like a whole lot, but especially towards the end game, being able to alternate between combo up and your straights, even with just the small straight, this is gonna be 9 undefendable damage if you're able to cycle through this. So that's like one of the best undefendable damage options. Early to mid game, I'm still would prefer combo into straights, but it's just a great end game upgrade to have out. I'll still put it out early game if I get it. Just I'm not going to be upset by falling into combo or combo up. And then the combo upgrade is super nice. One, obviously just for the extra damage. You're hoping to activate this almost every single turn, so you should get a lot of value out of upgrading that ability. But actually web shop in this matchup specifically becomes very helpful, especially in the late game. If he goes into shadows off of my combo ability towards the late game, I might even be willing to spend the combo just to fall into web shop, which is very easy to roll into, just to make sure I'm going to be able to get undefendable damage out. So yeah, great option for him. And then he also has some great cards for playing like stuff like web shooters. He just has a lot of different cards to get webbed on there. He has an instant action card to gain a combo. A lot of ways to just really disrupt Shadow Thief's game, kill him off so quickly. Thief has to build up so fast against Spider-Man, where it becomes very, very difficult to keep up. So I think by far Spider-Man is the easiest and most consistent counter to Shadow Thief. Just a few honorable mentions before I wrap up. One would be Loki. I think he's really good at countering Shadow Thief overall. The only reason he didn't make the list for me is I think his best strategy requires him to get the Vilify upgrade. Without that, I think he's a little bit unreliable, and I don't really want a hero that needs an upgrade in order to consistently counter Shadow Thief. But I do think with the upgrade out, he becomes one of the best, and maybe top 2 counters to Shadow Thief. But the Vilify upgrade allows you to inflict 2 bags on Shadow Thief, as well as doing 6 undefendable damage. So most of the time that's going to turn into 6 undefendable damage, as well as most of the time you're going to get 4 damage off of the bag. So you're doing 10 undefendable damage off of it, as well as inflicting a spellbound. So normally I try to run into Shadow Thief's defense to try to flush out dice mods, but with this ability you can do undefendable damage, avoid the defense, and then put a spellbound on Cornucopia and just keep them from getting the dice mods altogether. So yeah, if you can get that upgrade out and manage to roll it every single turn, which is definitely not a guaranteed thing, in that scenario he's one of the hardest heroes for Thief to beat. But without the upgrade, he can still do well. I don't think leaning into Confuddle too much is ever going to the game for you. But yeah, he has ways to disrupt Thief, so he's still a solid counter even without the upgrade, but I think his best chance is getting that upgrade out as early as possible. So the next one I would mention is Jean Grey. I think she's got almost perfect kit for countering Shadow Thief. Only reason she didn't make the list is I think she's a little bit too easy for Shadow Thief to disrupt. A lot of her kit is kind of based in timing the big attacks just right, so Thief can kind of just hold on to his dice mods and really mess her up whenever she's on the Phoenix side. But if things go well for her, she can be really tough for him to deal with. And then the last hero I'll talk about is Pale Lady. Only reason she didn't make the list is just because I don't have enough reps in with this matchup. I've gotten a few test games in, and I believe she's gonna be top 3 counter for me. She's just got the perfect hit of, on the Pale Lady side, you can kind of just use the defendable attacks early game to inflict prey on Thief, and then also build up your moon shards, and then hopefully you've gotten enough damage through where you can start pushing some big undefendable attacks on the werewolf side. But even still, if you feel like you can still do defendable, the werewolf side of the straights are insane. With 3 moon shards, the small straight does 8 damage plus 1 for each moon shard, so doing 11 damage on a small straight, and then also inflicting a bleed. So if you're still not afraid of Shadow Thief's defense, if you're holding on to a couple mods you could use, getting 11 damage and a bleed out is insane. And then she's just got so much easy and good options for undefendable, especially with a couple prey on Thief's board. So the max basic attack is doing 6 undefendable damage, and then with the prey that's normally going to be 8 undefendable damage. So some great options for beating Thief in the end game as well. So I think she'll be in the top 3, but I'll have to get more reps in with her before I say for sure. But yeah, that wraps up the video. Hopefully this was helpful for y'all, and maybe I'll be able to actually start playing Shadow Thief without it getting banned every single time. But yeah, if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.